Guy here in Las Vegas, getting ready for Week 2 preseason Raiders Niners. Niners TV, filling in for Greg Papa again this week. So traveled with the team here on Wednesday and went to joint practice today with the Las Vegas Raiders. And I am sad to report, embarrassed to report is the better word, that I'd forgotten about the strength of the sun. I thought it's going to be 100 degrees at 9 a.m., so what? I can handle that. I've been in much hotter. Went to Fresno State, grew up in Davis. Fresno, it's 113, something like that. No biggie. I'd forgotten about the strength of the rays from the sun without a cloud in the sky. That's what really gets you. So I'm waiting to see. We got to wait and see. Friday, how do I look? Am I burned? Does it calm down? For those of you watching on YouTube, I've got the miniature version of my spotting board with me, which served as some sunblock and note-taking. And so we'll find out. The Pete Carroll effect. I mean, I was not here for any practices with Josh McDaniels. Was not here last year. Antonio Pierce. The word at the McDaniels era was you couldn't see anything. Again, it's something that fans you don't really care about what the media got to see. But the point is just there was clearly a different vibe. Very energetic. We were allowed essentially full run of the place. And early on, one of the first things that the Raiders did was they came out and as a team, they're like running over the bags. And one of their coaches is he's got like a Pete Carroll fathead, like a huge, you see basketball, they hold it up in, student sections of basketball games. This huge picture of Pete Carroll's face, and it's stuck to a board. And the guy is like bouncing it in front of everybody's face, every player as they run through, and Pete's right in the middle of the thing. If you told me Pete gets run over by somebody because he's on the field, would not shock me. He looks fantastic, energy levels sky high. And, I think he's got something to prove. The Raiders have something to prove. The Raiders have players with stuff to prove. Raheem Mostert, by the way, on the Raiders. Jamal Adams running around playing safety. But anyway, so it was a team that got something to prove. And I think they practiced like it. There was a couple scuffles. Niners didn't really get into it. They did a good job of, resisting. And they can't afford it. Kyle Shanahan said afterwards, and they cannot afford. He told his guys, show your toughness by not getting kicked out of practice because your position group is too thin. You can't afford it. I think a couple things. Every 49ers practice that I watch, and I've used this way of talking about it. Like there's a line. I use this example a lot actually. People ask me, who's your favorite broadcaster? And I'm like, there's so many. Let's start with one thing. There's a line, and some people are above the line, and some people are below the line. Let's just start with that line of like, who's a big time pro? And I thought about that watching Niners practice, for the last several weeks, months, OTAs. Is you watch Christian McCaffrey practice, boom, above the line, no brainer, right? You watch George Kittle practice, Fred Warner, above the line. Ricky Pearsall is looking now every day like above the line guy, which he should be. He was a first round pick. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to move and be in the right play, He made a couple explosive plays today in the passing game. And if you didn't know anything, if I told you, hey, that guy right there wearing number 1, he caught 80 balls last year for the Niners, you'd be like, okay, I can see it. Watch him practice, right? You come out to a practice, you don't know anything. You're like, who am I supposed to be watching here? I think you'd believe it. Now, that's not actually doing it. That's not doing it in a game. But your first question would be like, somebody for the Niners caught 80 balls? I thought IU caught like 75, and that was a big deal. But you get the point. So I just think every time we get to watch, he's been such a bright spot for them. Every practice, it feels like somebody gets hurt. Nothing major, but today C.J. West hyperextended his knee. Similar to Michael Williams in the joint practice with Denver a week ago. When's Michael coming back? C.J. West, if Michael's not back in a week, is he going to be able to play by the Charger game? At this point, I guess no, but I don't know. But it's actually positive news. Could have been worse. ACL's fine. Walked off. Just like Michael walked off. So, bad news and good news, I guess, is how you would categorize that. Nick Bosa, neck soreness, worked out on the side today. I think as I'm preparing for this game and going through my spotting board, somebody tell me in the comments. I don't normally ask for opinions on topics. What are some things you like to hear me talk about? No, I'll just talk about what I want to talk about, and hopefully I know what it is, But tell me in the comments, would you be interested in a tour of a spotting board, a 49ers spotting board? Maybe I would do that next week before the Charger game if you guys are interested in that. Somebody sent me an email. They're like, "Who cares? Tell us about the TV stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll tell you." But I don't, I don't want to be too self-indulgent with that stuff. So, but for me, what matters, like, who's playing? Is Brock playing? And what Kyle said he wants him to play. Now, you look at the last 3 preseasons we can't look at because the first one Brock was not he wasn't the starting quarterback, right? And then in 23, he comes out, he plays in the second and the third preseason game. But he was also coming off the elbow, and maybe you thought, like, we got to get him in a game. And even then it wasn't a lot. He threw 5 attempts and 9 attempts in those 2 games. But then last year he did it again. Last year, the Saints, week 2 of the preseason, he makes 6 throws, no Trent Williams, and then comes back in the third preseason game, makes 12 throws in that Raider preseason game. Now, no Trent. What's Max Crosby trying to prove on the other end? Pleasance, like, who's playing? We don't know yet. I think that's part of the conversation for Kyle as it relates to Brock. But it sounds like Brock likes to play. I think. Even if he goes out there and hands the ball off, quick throw, that's it. Or maybe you have a good drive and I think it's more about, and I think anybody can probably identify with this, it's just you want to get you can't duplicate the preparation on a day you're not playing because you're not playing. On a day you are playing, now your body's activating even a little more adrenaline than it did for the joint practice, and you're putting all the effort in to really prepare, and you got to protect yourself, and you got to protect your teammates, and you got to study. So I do think from that seems to be some of the value. It's not about getting out there and shaking off the rust with a throw. That's more what the joint practice is for. But I do think it's more about that, like running through the tunnel, getting your mind right, jogging onto the field, just getting. And obviously the third preseason, but so when you do it in Seattle week 1, it's not the first time you've done that. As for the Raiders, Pete Carroll said everybody's live, quote unquote. He was asked, are the starters going to play? He said everybody's live. Now, that's a Pete answer. Like, maybe that means everybody's live. Maybe that means everyone's playing. I'm not exactly sure. It sounds like it, but I think anyone that's been around football for a long time, that sometimes the football coach answer on Thursday changes a little bit by Saturday, but we'll see. They got some interesting players, and obviously the running back you want to see. You want to see Alfred Collins with Ashton Genty. Alfred Collins is a guy, and I know not everyone. There was some concern. He didn't participate in OTAs. He wasn't fully healthy. Then he comes back, and he's ramping up, and it's not going as great as you want it to go for your second-round pick and all that. I will say this. It does feel like he's just better every time you watch him. And so when I think about what's interesting on Saturday, he's very near the top of the list. Does it just look a little bit? He's not going to have it fully figured out. I think Nick Martin's in that category, right? There was a lot of stuff. They said it. They got a lot of good tape of things to get better at. But he operates at such a speed. He processes and he reacts, and you just want it to be a little bit better, and then you want it to be a little bit better, and then you want it to be a little bit better. That's all of us in life. You just, when you plateau, when you stop improving, when you stop caring, that's when, girlfriends break up with you. But when you're trying to get better, you're making progress. It's early. We're trying to get to a destination. You don't get there overnight. This is really, really hard. This is the 1%ers. Although the 92%ers, I did watch. I spent some of my Thursday morning before watching. I haven't finished. Can I tell you this? Have you watched? I mean, yes, you did. You did. You watched it. The Taylor Swift, the Kelsey brothers. I enjoyed it. Anyway, but I would like. Who would I want to watch? Nick Martin, Alfred Collins. Who else is on this list? I can't wait to see Upton, Stout, Marquis Siegel. Marquis Siegel would be another guy. I'll give you a sneaky name to watch. How does so much was made of the 49ers drafting Junior Bergen in the 7th round, a returner, 8 touchdowns at the FCS level, the FCS record, not the FBS record. The FBS record is 9, held by, trivia question, 49ers draft pick, Dante Pettis. But so much was made when the Niners drafted Junior Bergen of like, hey, they let Brant Boyer have a pick. I think it's easier to let a guy have a pick in the 7th round than to let him pick a guy for the 53-man roster when he's the special. It's easy like in the 7th round. Now we got who's gonna play, and so I think there's a really interesting thing going on where it feels like, okay, Corey Kiner, who's a really interesting running back prospect, and has looked good. He can be a return guy on kickoff. Who can be your punt returner? Does it have to be Junior Bergen, or would Brant Boyer go? There was a play early last week. Thomas Morstead punted the play before the 49ers, the punt before the 49ers got the Broncos, Bo Nix, to throw the ball away from the end zone, intentional grounding safety, 2 points. So that series, Morstead punted it down to the 10. And at the end of the play, it was fair caught. The guy all around it was 33, Saran Neal. He's very interesting to me because, and he's the kind of guy where it's like, this is the preseason. Like, what do you want to lock in on? Oh, the third quarter. No, watch 33 on special teams. He has played over 2,000 special team snaps in his career. He's only missed 2 games in 7 years. He played last year in Miami. He was in Buffalo for 6 years. Okay? Now, he doesn't play as much in other ways, like Troy Brown. No, Troy Brown's not a good example. Who's the guy? It's not Troy Brown. Who's the long-time? Matthew Slater. Matthew Slater, the long-time special teams ace. He was like a captain for the Patriots. But, where else does Saran Neal play? Is he just a specialist? And do you have a spot on a 53-man roster for a team this beat up for a specialist cover guy? Well, how much better than your other cover guys is he? How much better than your other returners is Junior Bergen? Can you put somebody else back there on punt? Oh, yeah, we could put Ricky Pearsall back there on punt. Well, I don't know if we want to put Ricky Pearsall back there on punt. The receiver group is too thin. So, to me, that is one of the really interesting. That's not an answer, but that is a question I think that you have to be asking as you're trying to look at this roster. 86. Is he one of your best receivers? He has to be if he's going to be one of your returners. And when I say one of your best, I just mean good enough to make your roster. And if you're going, well, I don't know. He's the one thing you notice, he's not huge. Can he get open? What does Kyle Shanahan, you think, care more about? I just thought of this. If the return game or the cover game? What do you actually forget about what is Kyle? What do you care about more as somebody if you've watched a lot of the 49ers? They're being better at returns or being better at coverage? I know my answer. Being better at coverage. You want to be better at returns too, but being better at coverage. We can wave the arm, fair catch it, take that ball wherever they punt. Just catch it. So that's the other thing with Junior Bergen. You don't have a muff on Saturday, right? It's just the line. They're great. Those two guys are a great example of just how thin the line is at the back end of the roster. So hopefully that's an off the radar thing to watch. And maybe I should have put that at the beginning of the video. Let me see. Let me look at my board here. What else? O-line battles, interesting. Back where the Niners played in the Super Bowl. The Niners have played some crazy games here. The Super Bowl was a crazy game. The preseason game against the Raiders last year had that crazy finish where the Niners were throwing the ball all over the place at the end, trying to score. I'm just looking at my boards. Those of you listening to this and don't know, can't see me. I do want to comment, reiterate, because it's been a while. I understood, this is non-Niners, I understood why teams did not want to draft Shedeur Sanders. I also think that he might be good. I think he's a fast processor. He's not a crazy athlete, but whatever. You start making, once you get past the top 3 quarterbacks, you're the top 10 in some of these drafts. You're not getting total packages anyway. So here's Cleveland. Kenny Pickett's got a hamstring. Shedeur Sanders got an oblique. Dylan Gabriel has a hamstring. Joe Flacco's not going to play. The only other, they got Kenny Pickett and, Kenny Pickett's hurt. They got Tyler Huntley. They got all these we joked they got all these quarterbacks. If I were them, I'd keep Flacco, Shedeur, and Dylan Gabriel. That doesn't seem to be a hard decision. And then maybe one of them takes over for Flacco and the other one's the backup, or one of them takes over for Flacco and just isn't good enough. The odds that both Shedeur and Dylan Gabriel are good enough. Or maybe one of them gets traded, but I would not keep Kenny Pickett over the two of them. But Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders have to show you enough that you feel like, okay, they can be QB2 if something were to happen to Flacco. But, having a number 2 or a number 3 quarterback, it's just such a luxury. I think the Niners have one in Mac Jones. But anyway, I'm not one. I know there was some of this like, God, so much is being made. Why is everybody talking about Shedeur? Why not? I mean, he might be their quarterback soon. He might be Joe Flacco could get hurt tomorrow. That is a real quarterback battle, Dylan Gabriel, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. And mostly, forget about all the other noise. I want to I watched him in college a lot. I think he might be good. I want to find out. I want to see if he can play. By the way, here's a trivia question for you. In the last, I'll give you some stuff. Let me look at the board here. Something on the board. Trivia question. This is a Geno Smith trivia question. In the last 25 years, there have only been 2 drafts where there was one first-round quarterback. Last 25 years, there have only been 2 drafts where there was only one quarterback taken in the first round. Kenny Pickett in 2022 was the only quarterback taken in the first round. And in Geno's draft, there was only one. Geno was not a first rounder. Who was the first rounder in Geno's draft? And I'm glad I went over this with you because I didn't write down the year, but this would have been like, what year would this have been? This 2000 and maybe 2012 draft. The answer is E.J. Manuel. Now, we can also make it 2 out of the last. That's one of the 2 times it's happened. So it's happened twice in 25 years. If we go back to 98, it's happened 4 times. One of them both of the other 2 times I didn't write down, and I don't remember who the first rounder was. But I remember in one of those 2 drafts who the second quarterback taken was, and one of them was Giovanni Carmazzi. So you can tell I've been down the Football Reference rabbit hole. It's my favorite rabbit hole to go down. I've mentioned this before in talking about Greg Papa, and I just thought of it, and I want to mention it again. I think I said a few weeks ago, when I get asked, people, you go to a block party or a neighbor's house and somebody's there, and you get asked about, when you work in this line of business, you get asked about other people who are, people like, oh, what's this person like? What's that person like? And what I said at the time was, people don't ask how Greg is. They just go, Greg Papa's awesome, isn't he? That's kind of is he as fun? Is he as cool? Right? And the answer is yes. And so I'm very aware of it, but it was cool. Like, I was on the Niners team plane coming out here on Wednesday, And the staff on the plane wants to know, where's Greg? How is Greg? We miss him. The people around the team traveling party, how's Greg? People at the Raiders, of course. How's Greg? So anyway, I just want to share with you that everybody's wondering and rooting for him. And missing him. That's what I'm trying to say. Everyone's missing him. Everyone's texting him and missing him. And, when people are who you want them to be, who you hope they are, it's people you can look up to. It's a wonderful thing. And, I know the sports world is filled with, because I've seen them, people who are just like, ran into Greg, here's a photo, and it's just you guys holding beers or something, and that's cool. So I know a lot of you know that because, he's been such a fixture, like really a part of all of these Bay Area communities and the sports community that a lot of you know that already, but I just wanted to say it. So anyway, okay, that's what's up from Vegas on Thursday. And I'm going to get something to eat.